So, they say Mornye is basically Shorekeeper 2.0 and 100% must pull at all costs. But just look at this, even in best case scenario where all the conditions are fulfilled, she's still worse than Shorekeeper. That's hard to believe, right? And that's not even mentioning how harsh most of the conditions are for her buffs, as you can see one of them here. And if you can't fulfill them all, she's basically a paid version of Lynae that causes pulls. No offense. So that's exactly why I'm making this video, to show you what S0 Mornye actually looks like, and whether she's actually worth pulling for free to play. So let's begin. Alright, so let's start with my build for S0 Mornye, using the best free to play option, the R1 Discord, the only 4-star blood blade that provides energy regen. And honestly, this weapon is extremely close to her signature, as the only difference is a team-wide 20% crit damage buff, which isn't all that impactful, so no reason to pull her signature at all. As for the Aemeath set, now this is actually kind of funny, because there's absolutely zero difference between the new set and the older one in terms of buffs. As a matter of fact, the new set might even be worse, especially in the overworld, since it requires constant healing to work, whereas the old one just needs one healing. So yeah, if you already have plenty of stock staff, honestly just go for the older set. That said, personally I'll still suggest farming the new set, not just because it's easier to farm thanks to the daily, but mainly because it opens out the option of pairing her with other healers on the old set, which really expands her team options. It's not exactly useful right now since no DPS can activate her buffs yet, but I'm pretty sure that will change down the line. Either way, no matter which one you choose, you'll need 260 energy regen to max out her buffs, which is totally achievable even with 4-star Discord. In fact, she's actually really easy to build, since that's basically the only stat she needs. Defense and double crit are good to have, but totally optional. Finally, when it comes to her skills, the skill and middle circuit are honestly all you need to upgrade if you're playing her purely as a healer, though I personally suggest upgrading her Liberation too, since it actually deals a pretty solid damage thanks to the massive buffs it gets. By the way, it's also her only attack that scales with defense, which is why there's no need to upgrade anything else. And that's about everything to her build, so let's learn how to play her. Well, for once in a long time, her kit is actually simple and easy to read compared to most other units, which tells you she's very straightforward to play, if not actually brain that easy. All you have to do is to simply hold the attack button and use her Resonance skill as soon as possible, and she'll down the entire rotation by herself. Seriously. Honestly, her rotation is so smooth and quick that it's much more consistent than all other healers, which is great since that's one less thing you have to worry about in your team rotation. That said, while she's very simple to play, unfortunately here's the big catch for S0 Mornye. Her main debuff, which increases enemy damage taken by 40%, comes with so many strict conditions you have to fulfill, making her way more limited and weaker than she appears on paper. So let's break down exactly how it works. The first thing you need is applying Mornye's mark with the last hit of her rotation, which actually does nothing on its own. In fact, there's no visual cue to this mark, so you don't even know if it's working at all. Next, you need to involve the mark with a Tune Break finisher, which once again, there's no visual cue at all, so naturally, you're still not getting buff, even after fulfilling 2 of the conditions. So to actually activate the debuff, you need another debuff on top of everything, called Tune Nurture and Tune Strain. And guess what? Lynae is the only one who can apply them in the entire game right now. Yes, not even Mornye herself can apply them. See the problem here? Without Lynae, you're not getting this buff at all. That's how brutal it is. And that's not even mentioning that even if you pull Lynae and meet all the requirements, the debuff only lasts for 8 seconds. Yeah, just 8 seconds, after all the trouble. So on top of all the conditions, you have to control when to use the Tune Break finisher, otherwise there's a huge coverage problem to this debuff, which is just insane. And that's not even mentioning that controlling finisher isn't always reliable and consistent, because bosses have movesets that can actually make them immune to finishers, even after you have already built them up. And if that happens right when you are ready to deal damage, well, no buff for you, even though you did nothing wrong. And guess what, that's still not everything. Against multiple waves, this debuff is basically non-existent, since by the time enemies are vulnerable to a finisher, they are almost half dead, so the damage really gets buffed. Seriously, what the hell? So yeah, with all these conditions and downsides, it's extremely hard to actually benefit from this debuff, which is just crazy considering it's nowhere close to Shorekeeper's 50% crit value, and it's easily accessible for everyone. And devs know exactly how ridiculous this is, because they are literally selling the face in her first sequence, which eliminates 3 of the 5 downsides to this debuff. So basically they are telling you this right to your face. Want another Shorekeeper? Pay for her S1. And I won't lie, it's really tempting since you can just trade the colors for it in the shop, which technically costs even less than putting a signature. So from a business standpoint, the devs definitely knew what they are doing. Alright, finally as for the showcase, honestly there really isn't anything interesting to show, because she either works or she doesn't, with no middle ground. So I might as well share my thoughts and help you decide whether she's worth pulling or not. So here's the thing. Mornye is actually a dedicated healer designed just for teams with Tune Nurture and Tune Strain, and that's the only case where she's comparable to Shorekeeper. So if you already have Lynae, and you know you're still able to grab Aemeath after Mornye, then honestly sure, why not? She's a good pull. But if you're short on Astrites, especially for free to play, then it's totally fine to skip her and just run Shorekeeper. And honestly that's probably even better, since even in the best case scenario, Mornye is only on par with Shorekeeper. Not to mention, there are plenty of situations where her buff simply doesn't work, which basically turns her into a slightly better Vanilla even for the new teams. And please don't get me wrong, because by no means I'm saying she's trash. In fact, that's actually kind of a compliment, because Vanilla is one of the strongest support in the game, so being on her level is still very solid, definitely better than most units in the game. By the way, she actually has 2 charges in the new challenge, so she's actually pretty valuable if that's where you're struggling. Though I'm pretty sure it's getting nerfed on full release, because everyone except Wales struggles to get full reward. So yeah, basically in conclusion, she's really nice to have, but skipping her is completely fine as well, especially if you already have Shorekeeper. And finally as for her S1, well, I guess I'll skip it after all, because I don't really need another Shorekeeper for all the teams, and it's much better trading for your main DPS rather than a support. Anyway, that's everything I have to share about Mornye, so if you find this helpful, please leave a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you in the next one.